Life in 3 dimensions got me bent and got me twisting. I know I done said a lot, but I should probably stop pretending. I don't really hold the key and I can't really push a button. I just step up to the mic and try my very best to bust it, but I ran out of breath. It's tight in my chest. My feet just might fail. I can't stand the pressure.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Racially Speaking. It's me, your normal host, David, and once again, I'm joined by all-around good dude. I say that about most of my guests, but he really is just an all-around amazing man. Pastor, teacher with Surge Ministries, Be the Bridge. Remind me of your other organization with you and your wife.
The Healing Project.
The Healing Project. Pastor Jefferson Jones, a.k.a. Pastor JJ. Welcome back, my brother.
What's up, bro? What's up, man?
Yeah, man. There's that positive energy. I knew that's why I need you on here. I need some positive energy on the show and in my life. If you've been listening, Pastor JJ was on a few episodes ago. Look, today we're gonna jump in. As we're recording, we are 2 days after the inauguration. 2 days into the new presidency. And before we get in, I just want to say, of course, Pastor JJ had you on right before the election last time I had you on. And we chopped it up about thoughts going into the election. We talked about faith, Christian thoughts, Christian opinions, and actions and things we should think about. We shared some of our personal, vulnerable thoughts, fears. Wouldn't say suggestions, but suggestions, sure, opinions, leading into it, and just kind of where we're at. I have not done a follow-up episode per se since the results since President Trump was elected president, and I just want to say to the listeners, there's not been any reason for that other than taking some time to not do it, if that makes sense. That makes sense, Pastor JJ?
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah. That's we got to take time to rest and, give ourselves permission to step away. I was talking with a lady who was dealing with a very unique situation as it relates to the inauguration and what happened. Also been 8 years ago when he was president, and the complexity and the pain and the struggles that she was facing caused her to not watch the inauguration because she had other things going on in her life that took precedent over that.
Yeah.
And she made that same decision this year. Yeah. And I told her, you have a right to your feelings and you have a right to take care of yourself. Yeah. And that's by any means necessary.
Yeah. I think the word complex is a helpful one to kind of summarize whether or not you did or how much you engaged or disengaged. In my case, I was engaging behind the scenes with people and just kind of processing. I texted with you some even. And what I don't mean, just to be clear, is I didn't purposely, respond a whole lot since then out of pure bitterness, like, oh man, I don't like the results, so I'm going to disengage. That's not what I did. What I'm saying, it's more so we're just so inundated with everyone else processing and opinions, and there's a lot of great resources out there that I'd prefer listening to myself and people listening, and I just didn't feel like I had enough unique thoughts to put into a full episode that were going to be worth putting out. And so here we are, 2 days after the inauguration as we're recording this. Shouldn't be much longer by the time you're listening after that. And Pastor JJ, I wanted to have you back on to honestly have some follow-up raw thoughts about what's going on. We don't have to talk a ton about necessarily the election because it's been a minute.
Right.
But the inauguration just happened. We got a new president. President Trump is back. He's back in the White House officially as we're saying this. And there are, of course, lots, as I said, inundated, lots and lots of thoughts, feelings over the last 48 hours that I want to process from multiple lenses and perspectives. But, our listeners know this by this point. But as people, as men of color, men of the Christian faith, who are engaged with following these politics through those lenses, at least. I wanted to have some honest dialogue about this. I want to speak for ourselves and also speak for the people we've feel comfortable speaking up for on here as well. Mm-hmm. I want to say something very gracefully, and I'm going to toss it up to you for a little bit, Pastor JJ. Okay. It's also laced with a good amount of truth. I wrote this down, kind of some of my personal time, but I've seen a lot of Christian responses. I've had these personally too. There's a perspective out there that is, I think, diminishing the concern and maybe even hurt and fear of people now that Donald Trump is back in the White House. And I just want to say this. I think, and I want this to be helpful, not condemning, but I'm of the belief that if you are someone that is having trouble understanding what people are so concerned about, or that people are even concerned or fearful, you're just not in close enough proximity to, I say, Black and brown people.
Come on.
And the queer community.
Say it.
And I don't want to say that in a way that is condemning and like, okay, case closed, we got nothing to say to you. It's not what I'm saying at all. I say that encouraging, if that's you listening, to take the help and lean into the opportunity that you have now to befriend those communities, to study, and to surround yourself with people you're not used to being around, whatever that would look like, because it's a great opportunity to gain some empathy. I wanted to launch because that's kind of what I think is some of the backdrop of where we're going to go. Pastor JJ, would you agree?
Bro, that's how you know when you're connected to the right people and when you know God is in something. I believe really God is in this moment with us. My second line, my first line I'll save, but no, I'll say my first line, but my second line is going to hit and you're going to hear it. We are compelled by Jesus' love, not the law.
Yeah. Yeah, let me hear that again.
We are compelled by Jesus' love and not the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It is his love. It is his compassion, God's compassion, love for us that caused Jesus to not just live, not just die the way he died, but to live the way he lived. Mm-hmm. And so in his love for man, regardless of beliefs or what they practice, he chose to be in close proximity to them.
Yeah.
Listen to this quote now. Proximity changes our perspective and broadens our vision.
Yeah, that's good.
That's Michelle Warren in a book called The Power of Proximity. Then she went on to say this: as American Christians within the pragmatic evangelical paradigm, we recognize all too well that our vision is limited, so we spend money, time, and resources to shape and expand our lens. Yeah. So what we have here, brother, as we are mentioning, calling people to live in closer proximity, you're coming against people's comfort in their systems and their ideologies and how they've spent time, money, energy building, sharpening their lens, which causes them to keep a distortion not only of other people that they don't know, but then also of Jesus.
Yeah.
So we got issues on our hands, sir. This is right on. And so I had the question, just a hypothetical, this question for people to consider: who is expanding your vision?
Yeah.
And how you see people who don't think and believe like you.
Yeah. Christians, we love to quote, weep with those who weep, mourn with those who mourn. But the context of that isn't agree, be a yes man, agree with everybody.
If you're in agreement.
Yeah, get away from everyone you disagree with. That's not what it means. That context of that is just empathy. Weep with those who weep, mourn with those who mourn. Be willing to understand what people are going through. think that's true friendship. What is going to, you shouldn't be okay while those that are closest to you are not okay. It should affect your inner, your emotions, your soul. You shouldn't sleep like a baby at night if your friends are in turmoil. And so if you're having trouble understanding why people are upset right now, you don't have to agree with them. It really doesn't matter if you agree. It's oh, my friend is hurting. Let me try and or this group of people is hurting. Let me try and understand what's going on. Nowhere does it say, hey, look, figure out how you can agree with them or disprove them. More importantly, how can you empathize and love them? I got one more thing here. I was thinking this is a raw thought. You're the resident pastor on here. So I think that one thing that I feel like came to mind when I think about maybe this disconnect we're talking about right now between Christians and how we view power and status and leadership is kind of this abuse of this graceful perspective. A common phrase is like, believe the best, or we have to, just trust God is in control. Those are two things I practice regularly. Believe the best, because I think that helps not breed bitterness. Like, always believe the best until proven otherwise. And then obviously trusting that God is in control. But I think that can also be a way to abuse grace and give license to never speak truth to power. Like, I think the Bible has plenty to say about doing that as well as respecting the authority. And I was thinking about Paul, the Apostle Paul. Everyone knows who that is. Before he was converted and he was Saul. Like I said, this is a raw thought. Like, to me, I think about his conversion story. Super, super radical out of Acts, where, the scales are taken off of his eyes literally as he comes into relationship with God, with Jesus. And I think that story, the conversion story, can be used to be an example of, see, like, God can do anything. Like, look at Paul, like, he hated and persecuted Christians. Now, he's leading Christians. And then fast forward, people are a little bit like, oh, whoa, Paul, this is Paul. Like, I'm kind of scared. Like, this guy's like wants to harm Christians.
Right.
And to me, that's fair. That's true. But I think that it seems like this sentiment right now, painting with broad strokes for Christians, is that we wanted to elect Saul, not Paul, if that makes sense. Meaning, like, we want to give him this power under the guise that, okay, like, the Lord can do it. The Lord can do anything. Like he can change, or like he's in control. So this must have been God, or he got elected. He's the president. This is God's will. Like, it's ordained by God. Like, stuff like that. President Trump thinks he's, for him, say he's God ordained. Like, I think we're too shallow in saying, like, well, this is it. Like, let's see what happens. And there's a disconnect between the cost of that kind of lazy perspective. And I mean lazy of just like, well, go a little deeper. And I think you would see kind of the error or danger in how that affects it's going to affect all of us, really. Did you check with that? Am I off base there?
Yeah, no, that's like, it's a phrase, toxic positivity. And it is this level of positivity that it is so extreme and outrageous that it dismisses and it invalidates what people are going through. But then also it gives room for people to lean on the side of this, this spiritual idea that, for in this case, this is God's man. This is he's chosen. He's a Christian. He's all of these things, and yet we see the incongruency. We see the misalignment. But people are so married to their political parties and their ideologies that they see it as God using him in a way to position America to be God's chosen land, and for them to be able to uphold the things that God cares about.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. How are you personally feeling when you think about the next 4 years with President Trump in the White House? I remember I shot you a couple texts while it was unfolding and it became clear, okay, man, Trump won before it was even official. And I think I was pretty numb when it was happening. I was kind of just like upset, but not necessarily surprised. And at least via text, I remember when you responded, you seem pretty upbeat to me. Not upbeat, happy, but like, man, hey, Lord's in control. I'm not surprised. It is what it is.
Right. Yeah.
How you feeling?
I think for me, it is. I'm determined to be even more clear about just who Jesus is and what he requires of those who are following him. Mm-hmm. I am disappointed in some of the Christian community who have continued to lift this man up in the way that they do, because I know that it's political and it's for power and influence. And then also, I think my heart breaks for the people who will be in people groups who will be impacted the most by him being in office. And it is frustrating to see those who bear the name of Jesus to vocally, to verbalize, to post, and to say things about people, but then also to, it's performative that people are, posting things, say, well, for example, he said in America, there will only be two genders, male and female. Yeah. I said, okay. He said that. Well, what's your goal in posting that? Yeah. Who is that helping and who is that hurting? Yeah. Right. And I think that there are so many Christians who have an idea of who Jesus is, but don't have the emotional maturity, the self-awareness, empathy to care for other people beyond what they want to believe and think.
What I'm gathering from you saying that is, I think this takes it back to what we said about the whole empathy without having to agree. You don't have to agree. As Christians, the Christian perspective, the Bible is clear and talks about male and female, and that's fine. Christians can still hold fast to that and agree theologically with Donald Trump saying that, while acknowledging you spouting this off and kind of bloviating on day one right away and signing this bypasses the reality. And some people might not even realize this because of, being not in proximity, but not realizing and discounting, this puts a target on a lot of the queer community. And literally a target, it emboldens hate crime. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that is fact, and is what does happen when stuff like this is proclaimed in the way that President Trump proclaimed it. That's not speculation oh man, I'm fearful. It's like, I'm fearful because this does happen. Like, if it doesn't happen, it'll be surprising. And that's where I'd say there's a disconnect that I am grieved over, because it's just a lack of, I'll just keep bringing it back to proximity, a lack of proximity to the inhumaneness of how some of these, like we can talk about policy, but how policy is even delivered and what the discourse is even nowadays.
Yep.
And I think we've lost the willingness and ability oftentimes to dive in a little deeper. Now, I know, again, we're inundated with too much information, but I don't think the overcorrection we can't overcorrect and not engage.
Bro, we are obese with too much information.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can go ahead.
No.
All right. Well, let's get into some of the actual kind of nitty gritty. So he didn't wait. President Trump didn't waste any time. Day one. We're not political experts. We try and be as informed as we can. So I've written down like several things that many of which people have seen or at least heard about, and racially speaking, are things that I believe have to do with how marginalized communities are going to be affected and are already being affected by some of the sweeping executive orders President Trump has followed through. I'll emphasize following through. So not surprised, is following through. We can't say, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe he's doing this. I had no idea," because unless you're living under a rock, some people are.
Right. He said it.
You should not be surprised. It's happening. This is what we collectively have asked for. Be clear about that. Mass deportations, military force at our borders used on immigrants, revoking birthright citizenship, pardoning all January 6th insurrectionists.
Yeah.
Things like they've removed the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, which is something I've talked about here on the podcast of trying to help reduce gun violence. So the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, I put this on social media, should be a staggering thing. It's not. It's what I would assume should be have bipartisan support to stay. It's not the Office of take all your guns away, sell all your guns away. It's the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Like, gun owners should be in support of this. This helps everybody. Not sure what the issue would be with having gun violence prevention. So it does stuff like that. Okay, that's good. Let's start there.
Yeah.
Did I miss? Are there any hot button ones that I didn't list off right then?
No, that's good right there.
Yeah. I mean, how about mass deportations and how the whole views on immigration and immigrants specifically? Thoughts on that?
It's bananas.
Okay.
Because first, we know as Christians that America isn't a Christian nation. And so Christians, and it's just so strange that, okay, you're a Christian. And for those who think that America is a Christian nation, if it is and was a Christian nation, it would support the heart of Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah.
And care for immigrants, care for people, period.
Yeah.
And so for people to be gung-ho behind this and using the military force, it's just, there is an alignment with the Christian faith. It is not in alignment with the way Jesus would live or do life. And then on a practical measure, the impact of this, the trauma that it's going to cause for families, for individuals, for children, is going to be out of this world. And 50, 100 years from now, we're going to look back. You're going to see in the history books, in the documentaries of how this impacted people. And it's wild, man. And it makes me think revoking birthrights, like turning things over, and that's backwards.
It's the most unchristian thing you can do, taking away citizenship.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think to me, the opposition to, or not opposition to this, but the support of mass deportation, I think the support for that is, like you said, very unloving, very anti-Christian. And I think you can see that in scripture where people are trying to disprove him, saying like, oh my gosh, you're performing a miracle on the Sabbath. That's in the law that you can't do that. You're not God. Or trying to catch him in his ways. And he's like, I came to fulfill the law, like not to abolish it.
Not abolish it.
So it's like you're missing the point. Like we're missing the point, because I think to play devil's advocate is, well, we're getting rid of people that have broken the law, that are here illegally. Like that's the right thing to do. Yeah. Okay, there's some nuance there. I'm not a political expert. I'm not an immigration expert. Yeah. But from the basic, which either. Most people who are having this conversation are using the lens we're using of like, we're just normal people trying to figure this out. That's unloving. That's objectively unchristian to say, oh, well, the law, you're binded by the law, get out. Yeah. Versus a loving, empathetic, how can we go about this? And that's not to say the law doesn't matter, but military force at the border, and people that think that that's far-fetched is not far-fetched. We've seen the treatment of people at the border over the last 8 years at different points, being treated as dogs, as animals at the border. And it's pure trauma, like kids. Yeah. So like the inhumane treatment of people that, we're just chalking up to be, oh, well, they're illegal. They're objects now. Is just, again, where I'd say we're coming from with the posture of even this conversation.
And it's, it's the people who are, for Christians, gung-ho Trump, like it makes me question, I don't want to say question their salvation, but just their theology, their understanding of who Jesus is, and whether they are straddling the fence or if already on the other side when it comes to what it means to be a Christian and then what it means to be a nationalist.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was like, yeah.
Yeah. Let's jump to this, because this is, I think, the big incident that most people are aware of, whether or not you're engaged or not. Elon Musk, I forget what his title is as part of Trump's cabinet, part of Dodge. It's a new position with him and I think Vivek Ramaswamy. I forget what that stands for. It's an acronym. Elon Musk, of course, richest man, I think literally the richest man in the world at this point. Very close with Trump, part of his cabinet, made a new position for him, goes on stage, Inauguration Day, does what I think everyone not everyone, most straight thinking people I would believe, does a Nazi salute to the crowd. I saw some
twice.
So I saw some other footage, because of course there's always going to be pushback. Like, oh, well, it was a gut reaction. It was an awkward reaction. Obviously, I don't think that. But then there's more footage that's more than just a reel or a clip where he turns around and makes sure everyone can see it. He does it again.
He did it again. He doubled down.
And that obviously sent the internet spiraling. But a Nazi salute. Like I saw a tweet or whatever, a tweet. It was right on the nose, but it was, all right, guys, come on. We got 4 years of this. We can't just react to everything. Oh, wait, was that a Nazi salute? Like, it's supposed to be funny, but it's like, yeah, that's how serious, like, it feels. Like, it's not, it was hard to even, you can't laugh it off. It's just like, hold on. Did I just see that? Yeah. Okay, I'm not crazy. I did see that. Thoughts when you saw that, and then thoughts to people's reactions, Pastor JJ?
Holocaust.
Mm-hmm.
Holocaust, Jews.
Uh-huh.
How are Jews responding? What do they think? And that phrase, when people show you who they are, believe them.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing to confuse. There's no way that you cannot see what you saw.
Yeah.
Like, it is exactly what he did.
Yeah.
And with all the talk and all the things that this man has done, Elon has done over the last several years, it's tracking. It tracks with who he is as a person.
Yeah.
The racism in the workplace, things that he's said, things that he's done, things he's supported, and things that he's pushed, shows you who he is. And for him to be to have the level of influence and power in the White House that he has, again, it goes back to that giving people the green light to be racist.
Yeah.
To be white supremacists. I'm just going to call a thing a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just as we call out sin in the Bible, we call it what it is. And that is, we are seeing white supremacy on full display.
Yeah. It's so strange to me.
And it does matter.
Yeah, it's so strange to see how unequipped we are to react to this. Like you said, I wasn't believe people are who they should. What'd you say? When people show you who they are,
when people
believe
show
them.
you who they are, believe them.
Right. This wasn't surprising in the case of Elon Musk. Maybe a touch of surprising just because of how offensive and provocative that doing that is. I thought about this is being broadcast all over the world.
He should have he might as well went on and had a Confederate flag up there with him.
I mean, this is being broadcast all over the world. Like, what are people thinking? Like, what would we think if it wasn't here? Like, I'm just like, we are so ill-equipped and so far gone. We're so traumatized over the last 8 years of
right.
all of these shenanigans, to put it lightly.
Yeah, and I don't know if you remember last year there was a season. I remember when, because this happened when something happened to my youngest. It happened around this time last year. That the question came out about America. Was America ever a racist country?
Mm-hmm.
And is it a racist country now?
Yeah.
That's when Nikki Haley was running.
Yeah.
And she made that statement.
Yeah.
And so we see these things happening. They playing right in our face. They're not being covert about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
They're being overt because they have been empowered. They have been supported to do what they want to do because they know there are no consequences.
No consequences.
And too many Christians, I'll be even more specific, too many white Christians and too many too many black and brown Christians
mm-hmm.
and other minority Christians are indifferent about these things, and they act as if it doesn't matter when it really does.
Yeah. Hopefully, listeners are seeing some of the specificity we've had of why it's not just us talking, but these are specific things of how people are affected by a Nazi salute, by an executive order of mass deportation. It's not just, that's on TV, that's the news, I can still go about my normal day unaffected.
Bro, this stuff is nuts.
It's like, no, that's not actually how this works. These people only are going through taking these measures, taking this much initiative to get these places of power because they know it does affect people and they can affect people.
Yeah, just even to be real, to be even more practical, touch home. Like I live in Duluth, Georgia.
Yeah.
And here, and then also in a lot of the places that are touching Duluth, there's heavy Hispanic community,
mm-hmm.
heavy Indian community, and heavy Asian communities. And so we are not just seeing, what's happening on TV. We're living this stuff out.
Yeah.
We talk about proximity.
Yeah.
My sons have friends from different ethnic backgrounds. Our son's friend circle is very diverse.
Yeah.
And so, but when you're doing life with different people, you feel what they feel.
Yeah.
Because there's a different level of intimacy.
Yeah.
But when you live on the outskirts, when you live in your high rise and your mansions and your gated communities and you live separate, like you don't have the sensitivity to who's being impacted the most.
Yeah. I have several friends from India and South Africa that not just since the inauguration, but I've been talking to them about just how they're feeling leading up to the election and whatnot, and not quite as much. A lot of times I would find them, and these people in my mind are really strong Christians and believers, and super encouraging and inspirational to me. So I'm like, man, your faith is so much stronger than me, American me. You guys, there's something about how y'all are just, comforted and filled with the Spirit. But what I will say is, as much as they might come off as more charitable and meek, a lot more so than I am, I would say, there's still been real fear when I talk to them about, what could happen. They're not doing stuff like going home. Like, well, at the same time, I'm not gonna leave the country at this point. Like, not saying they're here illegally, but like, I don't know what could happen. Like, I might not be able to ever come back. So absolutely fearful of, stuff like a sweeping mass deportation and what that could do. Not just that, I want people to understand, not just that they could get deported, but what that does to their everyday life. Like, they live normal lives here. Like, how emboldening people to look at them as the foreigner doesn't belong here. And what that does for their safety, fearing for their safety, fearing of stuff like, a hate crime being categorized as something they're even not, like, wrongfully. Like, I think people, it can be naive to think that if and when these mass deportations are to be carried out, that it's going to be carried out in a smooth way. Like, I feel like in a way that we're set up to be like if we've been against it, like you and I, from the beginning, we're kind of set up with a lose-lose, because it's like, I want this to go poorly because I want it to show like this was a terrible idea, but I also know if it goes poorly, a lot of people are going to be hurt.
Right.
Like, it's on a macro. It's a macro example. I think that's the right word of like what I went through, in elementary school, middle school, growing up. I mean, even adulthood at times. Like, I don't know what your experience is, Pastor JJ, but when we talk about proximity, if you guys are having trouble understanding what the fear is, it's like you probably you either didn't or weren't in proximity to people that grew up hearing some sentiment of go back where you came from, or you're not American. And that is what this is. This is becoming law.
Yes.
Like, go back where you came from. Get out of the country.
It's
I grew up hearing
man.
that all the time. And so that's essentially what's going to be happening. Like, it's kind of a joke for Asian people to be like, oh, y'all look alike type thing. No one that's not Asian say that. But that, and so like that becomes a serious thing now. Like, if we look at history, like when internment camps with the Japanese, you don't think Chinese and Korean people and Filipino were, harmed and brutalized and, they look like that. Throw them in there too. You don't think that's how it's going to be when they hit communities, if this is carried out, and say, like if a couple slip in there, like, let's get them all out just to be safe. Like, that's what, and all that is connected to something as scary as a Nazi salute from on stage on Inauguration Day.
That's sick. That was nuts, man.
Yeah.
That's like, it's like holding up a noose.
Yeah.
I mean, we could think of so many different things that equate to what he did. And he knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah.
But to feel bold enough and privileged enough to do that, that's wild.
No consequences. Oh, yeah, last thing on that, and we can move off of it.
You're a sick dude.
Yeah. Is I wasn't necessarily surprised or necessarily torn up quite as much about the sorry about my dog barking. About the gesture so much as if you go back and watch it, the crowd roaring with the pause. I know there's, it's mob mentality and there's some awkwardness, but there wasn't even a collective like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Or
no cringe.
We've gone too far. No, it's like louder, fist pumping.
Right. It's like give us Barabbas.
Yeah. Like louder, and then, like I said, he turns around, does it more. Like, let me make sure everyone sees. I'm gonna do it again. People getting yeah.
Make sure you see. This is what I did.
Let's go. It's just, and then this is from. Honestly, this sounds kind of like I feel like a churchy statement to like put out a fire, but it's from the Anti-Defamation League. It says, in this delicate moment, it's a new day, and yet so many are on the edge. Our politics are inflamed, and social media only adds to the anxiety. So blaming social media. It seems that Elon Musk made an awkward gesture in a moment of enthusiasm. Not a Nazi salute, but again, we appreciate that people are on the edge. In this moment, all sides should give one another a bit of grace, perhaps even the benefit of the doubt, and take a breath. This is a new beginning. Let's hope for healing and work toward unity in the months and years ahead. I think that's what we're talking about at the beginning, right? It's an abuse of that sentiment of, well, let's just give a little bit of grace, let's not overreact. Like, that is, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. My friend sent me this the next morning after Inauguration Day, so I guess yesterday, and it wasn't somebody trying to argue, it was just what you think. And my immediate reaction was like, that's a ridiculous response. That's a ridiculous response. There's no part of me that doesn't think he did that on purpose. Maybe the 1% of me that would entertain that it was an awkward gesture doesn't even really have any weight, because that 1% to me is it's what it represents overall. Like the awareness, like you said, the knowing that he was confident enough to be able to do that, had the privilege to be able to do that. And the crowd, no one knows. Do you think the crowd thinks that was an awkward thing? You think the crowd thought it was, that's the Roman salute or something? It wasn't the Nazi. It's like, no one thought that.
I don't even know what a Roman salute is.
Right, no one knows. So, like I said, we can move off this because we should.
Ooh, Lord help us.
But yeah. Let's go here a little bit. Pardoning the rioters from January 6th. Thoughts on that?
Mustard. No, I'm just like, what in the world, man? How? I mean, this ain't like this is just some random house in a neighborhood. This wasn't Target. This wasn't them stealing TVs.
Yeah.
This is the Capitol.
Yeah.
And they injured an officer. So I'll pause on that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Where is the back to blue?
Yeah.
Or Blue Lives Matter for this officer?
Yeah.
Seems to be quite selective when certain people want to say Blue Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm not rocking with it. It's not cool at all. Like, I understand pardoning and when it's needed or necessary. But this right here, that's a whole nother level of.
It's built on a lie, a lie that President Trump was responsible, I believe, convicted of being responsible for creating and encouraging to happen. Yeah. But specifically, not that he really has any like a ton of integrity to stand on, but to me, if I can try and be a little bit objective, the hypocrisy in it is that he's defended himself a lot with saying, "Oh, I wasn't." If you go back and listen, I wasn't emboldening them to go do what they did. I said, "Go peacefully protest." Obviously, I believe he said, and I've heard he said much more than that. But let's just say, let's take that as truth. All I did is say this. Like, I didn't tell them to do the full out insurrection. What they did, I told them to go peacefully protest. So I'm not liable, or I can't be held accountable for what ended up happening.
Their actions.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's say that's true, which proved to not be true. Why would you then pardon them for what they ended up doing? So are you responsible for it or not? And was it wrong or not? Did it? So to me, that's where, even for his own sake, he just has no way out of it with full integrity. Because he already said, I didn't tell them to do what they ended up doing. But okay, well then there's no reason to pardon them then, because then that they should be punished by the law, according to what you're saying then. Yeah. I'm trying to look more at my notes. I'm sure you don't, but you got anything to add to that?
No, it's just it just really reveals the state of the nation and the hearts of people.
Yeah.
In general. And I think as we're talking, about faith as well, that I think a lot of Christians and Christian nationalists, they want America. They want America to have a pastor.
Interesting.
But the president can't be that.
Yeah.
And there's just so many issues. So I think, there's just so many issues in how, the nation has developed over time. And I think it is the avoidance of truth.
Yeah.
And the cowardice of man. I'll choose the word complicity.
Yeah.
And the silence has gone on for so long that people are crippled and handicapped at on how to respond. And so for the people who would side with them, with conservative and Trump and all of those things that are in that circle, even if there is something in them that causes a check, it's that they don't even know how to get out of it because they're in so deep. So yeah, it's just a big fat mess.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. All right. Are we overreacting to anything, / as much as we have pressed into this is real, this is reality, this affects the well-being of us, of the marginalized communities, it especially with proximity at play, does affect our lives, should affect our lives. What would you say to people listening that are like hopeless? Like, I can't do anything about what's going on. Are we hopeless for 4 years now? And I don't mean hope like you said, like, I'm not saying I want a pastor, I want a candidate, an ideal candidate. There's not one. Right. I want to note, like, this isn't a pro Kamala Harris podcast episode. This is a reaction to President Trump being there. Of what is and what is happening.
Yeah.
What do you say?
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
I say that we're not hopeless, even in the midst of the continual setbacks and the I would say the loss of hope from the continued backward steps in this nation. And so I just think about, you look at the inauguration, and it was on the day that we celebrate MLK.
Yeah.
And my wife and I were having conversation, and others as well. So, man, how would Martin Luther King be responding to this today?
Yeah.
And no, he's not Jesus, right? But he is, if not top, he is easily top 5, if not higher, influential men in the world.
Yeah.
In the world.
Sure. For sure.
Most influential man that hasn't been a president in this nation.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what he said. You talked about hope. And, when hope begins to die, it's hard to act and to move. And so, but, is there anything that we can do? And I wrote down this quote from his last book he wrote in 1967. And it's called Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community?
Mm-hmm.
And he said this. He said, and so we still have to do more than register and move then vote. We still have to create leaders who embody virtues we can respect, who have moral and ethical principles we can applaud with an enthusiasm that enables us to rally support for them based on confidence and trust. We will have to demand high standards and give consistent, loyal support to those who merit it. We will have to be a reliable constituency for those who prove themselves to be committed political warriors in our behalf. And so, when I read the words of MLK, and, think about things like this, that we got to understand the power that we have as a people and as a community. Yeah. And so this goes back to, community, and what are we going to do in our different communities to rally to make change first where we are. Back to that word from the beginning, proximity. Mm-hmm. I think people the president does have power, but we look at the president and we forget about what we have on the grassroots level. Yeah. And so, even though there could be a shot at hope and we can, take some jabs here and there, I think we just have to be able to have space, like you said, to rest, to step back and reset, because you can't reset in the chaos. Yeah. Yeah. You got to find ways to step away and go to your community and go to trusted people, like-minded people who have common interests, and find hope and build there, and then keep moving, keep acting. Like, people, I know there are people who are checking out and, making posts and saying things like, I'm on a sabbatical for the next 4 years. And I'll be real with you. I can't afford to not act. Yeah. I can't afford to not do something. Yeah. Right. And that's a part of our kingdom responsibility, to be engaged. But in that system in the way that we engage, we also know that in that work, there is rest. Yeah. So there's a balance in a way. I believe there are things that we can do. So, yeah.
Seems idealistic, this one part, but I like what you said about, or what the part of the quote that you read from Dr. King, with getting back to good virtue or good moral judgment. Mm-hmm. And we need to exercise that as with our engagement and as voters, but then also it would just be so different if that was the bar that we measured how we vote, I believe. Yes. It doesn't have to be a Christian nation to say that, and that's not even what I want. But I think that on a human level, voting for good morals would have a different type of result. And I think I completely agree with what Dr. King said. And that's something that I even encourage our listeners to press into. Like, just press in. And a lot of times it doesn't need to be pressing in a way that is super necessarily in depth. It's just, hey, think about this from a love your neighbor, love others perspective, and see how that transforms how you view something like politics, which, if you're like me, you don't want to spend time being an expert in to be able to engage.
Right.
But especially Christians, like, read the Bible. I see WWJD's bracelets are coming back. Like, start there. I don't even, start at that level. WWJD.
Right.
And kind of go from there. And I'm thinking about the moral judgment thing, even of, you bring up Dr. King. We can find moral judgments about everybody if we want to. Like, people like to call some of his moral failures with infidelity to question and use that to discount, he was a bad guy, he wasn't even a Christian. It's like, okay, now everyone's free to think what you want. Are you applying that? So why was the sweeping result why does that result in voting for a Donald Trump? If we're going to discount, look for moral failures in somebody like a Dr. King. And I'm not saying, maybe I am saying, but what I'm not saying is like, hey, everyone's even here, or somebody is a worse person, because that's, goes against Christian belief too on sin. But what I'm saying is good moral judgment, not perfect or condemned. It's like good moral judgment. I think it'd be life changing. But I'm gonna be going off on this a little too much. You got anything else on that, Pastor JJ?
No, that's spot on, man. It's just people are caring more about their status in their pockets versus people.
Yeah, that's the truth. Well, look, Pastor JJ, I appreciate you giving our listeners some of your time today.
Oh, yeah.
Love chopping it up with you. This has been edifying, helpful, and I hope it's given the people a lot to think about. But mostly I hope it's given us some hope moving forward. These fights aren't over. We can move forward. We're not hopeless. But y'all, proximity to others, stay engaged, take care of yourself, but stay engaged with what's going on. For better and for worse, this is what's happening. This is reality, and we got to keep it moving. So, Pastor JJ, thank you so much. Listeners, thank you for listening.
You're welcome, man.
The music you're listening to is done by our guy Dylan Dent. Our artwork was created by Ashley Bush. And we'll see y'all next time. Peace.
The nightmare might scare you, no worse than reality. They hunt you by day, R.I.P. Ahmaud Arbery. Everybody got a time, but that's less than comforting. I hope I'm alive by the time they choose to comfort me. Mosquitoes in the vein, or leeches on my soul. This money on my mind is a fracture in my bones. You get crippled by continuing existence like a ghost. And they wonder why we drink, and they wonder why we smoke, and they wonder why we think that everything's a joke. I'm shocked that we can sleep, must be the thought of letting go.